The trade nobody expected. Ralph Carter was tired. 3 days in deep space, hauling metal scraps from a mining moon to a station no one cared about. His cargo ship rattled like an old tin can every time the engines coughed. His coffee was cold. His credits were low, and he hadn't spoken to another living soul in almost a week. When the dusty silhouette of Port Vega outpost came into view, Ralph's eyes lit up. It was the kind of place where starship captains went to rest, trade gossip, or drink away bad luck. A few repair docks, a few shady shops, and one old cantina that had seen more fights than peace talks. Exactly the kind of place Ralph liked. The air inside the cantina was thick with alien smoke, and the smell of fried something Ralph didn't want to identify. Strange music echoed from a dusty corner, played by a 4-armed creature who looked like he hadn't been paid in years. Around the tables, traders, mercenaries, and drifters whispered deals in a dozen different languages. Ralph walked to the counter and ordered a drink. The bartender, a reptile-looking man with scales like dull copper, grunted and poured something green into its chipped glass. Ralph had barely taken a sip when someone slid onto the stool next to him. He turned and saw a woman, or at least she looked mostly human. Her skin had a faint silver shimmer. Her eyes glowed a soft blue, and her hair was braided with thin strands of glowing thread. She smiled, slow and careful. "You look like a man who could use a change in fortune," she said, her voice calm but sharp at the edges. Ralph smirked. "Lady, I'm not buying anything. I'm not selling anything," she replied. "I'm offering you a trade." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small crystal vial, filled with a liquid that sparkled like starlight. "One drink," she said, placing it gently in front of him. "In exchange, you carry something for me." Ralph laughed. "What, in my ship?" "I don't smuggle for strangers." "It's not smuggling," she said softly. "It's guardianship." The word made Ralph frown. He eyed the vial. The drink looked harmless, and part of him thought it might be some fancy alien liquor. "What's the catch?" he asked. "No catch," she smiled. "Just a promise." It was a stupid idea, but Ralph was bored, and the drink shimmered in the dim light like it was daring him. So he took it, tossed it back, and felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. When he looked up, the woman was already walking toward the exit. "Wait, what am I carrying?" he called after her. She didn't turn around. "You'll find out soon enough." Before Ralph could chase her, the doors of the cantina opened again. 2 large figures in dark armor stepped inside, scanning the room like hunters searching for prey. The bartender froze. A few patrons slipped quietly toward the back. Ralph's instinct told him to stay still, but then he heard a soft voice behind him. "Are you Captain Ralph Carter?" He turned, and there they were, 3 girls, maybe early teens, their features strange and beautiful. Their skin was pale with faint glowing patterns under it. Their eyes shimmered like deep space. The tallest held the youngest by the hand, while the middle one clutched a small metal case. Ralph blinked. Yeah, that's me." The tallest girl nodded. "Then we belong to you now." Ralph stared, not sure if this was some kind of joke. Before he could speak, one of the armored men shouted, "There! Take them!" The tallest girl's eyes widened. "We have to leave now." The cantina erupted into chaos. Chairs overturned, patrons scattered, and the music stopped with a sharp twang. Ralph had no idea what was going on, but his gut told him the armored men were trouble. He grabbed the youngest girl's hand and bolted for the side door. They ran through narrow service tunnels behind the cantina. The smell of oil and metal thickened the air. The armored men's footsteps thundered behind them, getting closer. The middle girl kept glancing back, muttering something in a language Ralph didn't understand. Finally, they burst out into the open space of the docking bay, his ship sitting there like the last safe place in the galaxy. Ralph sprinted toward the ramp, heart pounding, but just as they reached the base, a shadow moved from behind a stack of cargo crates. A tall alien with scarred skin and a voice like gravel stepped out, blocking the way. "You better take them." "And run," the alien growled, "or you won't live long enough to regret it." Asterisk on the run, alien's warning echoed in Ralph's head. He didn't have time to ask questions. The armored men were already pushing through the docking bay. Doors, their heavy boots hitting the metal floor like war drums. Ralph didn't think. He just grabbed the tallest girl's arm and pulled all three toward the ramp of his ship. The scarred alien stepped aside, but his cold eyes followed them, as if silently measuring whether they would survive the next hour. "Move!" Ralph shouted. They rushed up the ramp, and Ralph hit the panel to seal the hatch. The youngest girl clung to his arm, trembling, while the middle one still gripped that strange metal case like it was worth more than her life. Inside the cockpit, Ralph dropped into the pilot's chair and started flipping switches. The ship hummed to life, but then the hum faded, sputtered, and died. Ralph cursed under his breath. "Come on, don't do this to me now." The eldest girl stepped forward. "They disabled your ship," she said calmly, like she was reading a fact from a book. "What? How do you—" Ralph stopped, realizing now wasn't the time to ask. He ran to the maintenance panel, pulling wires and forcing a manual restart. Outside, metal clanged. Someone was on the ramp, trying to cut through the hatch. The youngest girl's eyes filled with light, like a sudden spark had lit inside her, without warning. She touched the wall, and a blinding flash burst through the cockpit window. Ralph shielded his eyes. Outside, he heard shouting, the armored men stumbling, weapons clattering on the floor. What was that?" Ralph asked, blinking away the spots in his vision. "She can make light," the eldest explained. "Enough to blind, enough to confuse." Ralph stared for a second, then got back to the controls. The ship's engines roared awake this time. He punched the thrusters, and the old cargo hauler lifted, rattling violently as it tore away from the docking bay. Through the rear view, Ralph saw the armored men regrouping, pointing at his ship. One of them raised a wrist device, and suddenly, the sky behind them lit up with engine flares. A small, black bounty hunter ship was launching in pursuit. "They're coming after us," Ralph muttered. The eldest girl's voice was steady. "They always do." That line sent a chill down his spine. Ralph's fingers flew over the controls, guiding the ship into the asteroid belt nearby. Jagged rocks spun slowly through the void, each one large enough to crush them into dust. The black ship followed close, slipping between asteroids with terrifying skill. Ralph used every trick he knew. He dove behind a spinning boulder, cut engines to drift silently, then gunned them at the last second to dodge incoming fire. The girl stayed quiet, gripping their seats. The middle one's eyes glowed faintly as her fingers moved in the air, like she was typing on invisible keys. Suddenly, the black ship's targeting lights flickered out. "What did you do?" Ralph asked, amazed. "I told their weapons they were tired," she said with a faint smile. "You told them?" Ralph repeated, not sure if she was joking. The trick bought them time but not safety. The bounty hunter's ship switched to manual weapons, firing bursts of energy that lit the asteroids around them. Ralph weaved through the field, metal scraping as they barely avoided a spinning shard the size of a building. The youngest girl's light flashed again, distracting the pilot behind them. Then Ralph spotted an opening, a narrow gap between two tumbling rocks, just wide enough for his ship. He dove through, engines screaming. The black ship tried to follow, but clipped one of the asteroids, spinning away into the void. Silence filled the cockpit, except for the hum of the engines. They had escaped, for now. Ralph leaned back, catching his breath. "All right," he said. "Now you're going to tell me what's going on." The eldest girl glanced at her sisters, then back at him. "We are the daughters of Queen Alira," she said, her tone still calm. She was the ruler of the Solari worlds. "Until the Syndicate came," Ralph frowned. "Syndicate? You mean those armored guys?" "They are only the claws of the beast," the girl replied. "The Syndicate controls whole star systems, and they want us because we are the last of our kind." The middle girl opened the small metal case. Inside was a crystal sphere, faintly pulsing with light. "This is our mother's legacy," she said, "and the key to something they will kill worlds to possess." Ralph stared at it, feeling like he was staring at trouble wrapped in a shiny package. "Why me?" he asked finally. The eldest met his gaze. "Because you drank the vow," Ralph blinked. "The what now?" "That drink you took," she explained. "It is a Solari bond. Once accepted, you are bound to protect us by our law and—" "By your word," Ralph groaned. "I thought it was just some fancy liquor." The eldest tilted her head. "If you want to live, you must take us somewhere safe." "And where's that?" Ralph asked. The youngest, still holding his sleeve, whispered, "Nowhere is safe." Before Ralph could reply, the ship's warning alarm blared. A red light flashed across the console. They had just been scanned, and whoever scanned them wasn't far away. The eldest girl's voice was calm but urgent. "They've already found us." The first attack, the warning alarm screamed through the cockpit. Ralph's fingers tightened on the controls. Through the forward window, the black shape of a ship slid into view, dark and sharp like a predator in the deep. Its wings curved forward. Its engines glowed blood red, even from this distance. Ralph could tell it was built for one purpose: hunting. "That's not the same one from the asteroid belt," Ralph muttered. The eldest girl nodded slowly. "No, this one is worse." Her voice was calm, but her hands were gripping the seat, knuckles pale. A cold voice crackled through the ship's comms. "Ralph Carter, you are carrying property of the Syndicate. Power down your engines and surrender immediately." Ralph rolled his eyes. "Yeah, sure. Let me just roll out a welcome mat." The middle girl leaned forward. "They will not let you live if you stop." "I figured," Ralph replied, flipping switches. "Hold on tight." The hunter ship fired first. A burst of blue energy that scorched past Ralph's hull. The cargo ship shook from the shockwave, panels rattling. Ralph yanked the controls, diving into a steep roll. The girls clung to their seats, the youngest letting out a sharp gasp. "Any of you got tricks that work on ships this big?" Ralph asked. The middle girl's eyes glowed faintly. "I can try." She closed her eyes, hands twitching like she was pulling invisible threads. A few seconds later, warning lights flashed on the hunter ship. Their targeting system stuttered, weapons hesitating for half a heartbeat. "That's all I can do," she said, breathless. "It's enough," Ralph grinned, swinging the ship into a debris field. Chunks of broken satellites and shattered station panels drifted silently in the void. Ralph weaved between them, each turn scraping dangerously close. The hunter followed, blasting apart anything in its path. Pieces of burning metal spun around Ralph's ship, some slamming into his hull with heavy thuds. The eldest girl spoke suddenly. "Left." Ralph glanced at her. "What?" "Left," she said sharply. He obeyed, swinging the ship just as a massive piece of wreckage tumbled past. The hunter smashed into it head-on, but instead of stopping, it cut straight through. Its hull was stronger than steel. "They're not giving up," Ralph muttered. "They never do." The eldest replied, her voice quiet, almost like she was talking to herself. The hunter closed in again, firing in rapid bursts. One shot slammed into Ralph's rear engines, alarms screaming as the power dipped. The youngest girl pressed her hands against the wall. Light began to pour from her fingers, filling the cabin with a strange glow. Through the rear cameras, Ralph saw the hunter ship jerk slightly, as if its pilot had been blinded. He used the opening, spinning the cargo hauler in a sharp barrel roll before diving toward a nearby moon. The moon's surface was cracked and covered in sharp ridges. Ralph flew low, hugging the terrain. The hunter followed close, its weapons lighting up the dark ground. Every blast sent plumes of dust into the air, making visibility worse. Ralph gritted his teeth, scanning for any kind of cover. "There." The eldest pointed to a narrow canyon ahead. Ralph pushed the thrusters, racing into the canyon's shadow. The walls closed in on both sides, jagged rock scraping dangerously close to the wings. The hunter tried to follow, and it did, its smaller frame letting it slip into the canyon with ease. They're too fast, Ralph growled. The middle girl suddenly leaned forward. Give me the cums, Ralph hesitated, then flipped the switch. She spoke in a language Ralph didn't recognize, sharp, rhythmic, almost like singing, a pause. Then the hunter ship replied in the same tongue. The middle girl smiled faintly. They will slow down. Why? Ralph asked. Because I told them I would fry their entire navigation corps if they didn't. The reprieve was short. A second ship appeared above the canyon, blocking the exit. This one was bulkier, with heavy guns mounted on its sides. They brought backup, Ralph muttered. The eldest's voice was steady. They will try to trap us. Not if I trap them first, Ralph replied, pulling the ship into a steep climb. The hunter below tried to follow. But Ralph's sudden move kicked up a storm of dust and rock. The lower ship lost visual, smashing into the canyon wall with a spray of fire. Ralph burst out of the canyon and straight toward the bulkier ship above. At the last second, he cut engines, letting his ship drift underneath the enemy's belly. Before the enemy could aim, Ralph fired his forward thrusters, using the heat to disrupt its sensors. Then he dove straight into open space, engines roaring. Silence returned, broken only by the faint hum of Ralph's ship. The radar was clear. For now, Ralph leaned back, sweat on his forehead. Well, he said, that was fun. The eldest girl tilted her head. Your definition of fun is strange. Ralph glanced at the metal case in the middle girl's lap. That thing in there, he said. It's why they're after you, isn't it? The eldest nodded slowly. Yes, but it is also the only thing that can stop them. Ralph frowned. And let me guess, you're not going to tell me what it does. The eldest gave a faint smile. Not yet, the youngest girl curled up in her seat, still glowing faintly from the energy she had used. The middle one closed the case again, her fingers trembling. Ralph didn't know where this was heading. But one thing was clear. Every time they stopped, the syndicate would find them. He sighed, checking the navigation. All right, he said. We need somewhere to hide before round 2. Asterisk refuge with an old friend. The stars stretched endlessly. Ahead, Ralph set the ship on autopilot and leaned back. The girls had gone quiet, the youngest sleeping in the co-pilot's chair, the middle one tinkering with a small device from her case, and the eldest staring out at the void, her expression unreadable. He knew they couldn't keep running forever. Every jump they made burned fuel he didn't have credits to replace. Every fight damaged the ship a little more. They needed somewhere to hide. Somewhere off the syndicate's usual routes. One name came to mind, Jacques Morlan, an old friend from Ralph's smuggling days. If anyone could hide them, it was Jacques. He ran a mining colony inside an abandoned asteroid, far enough from main trade routes to avoid most law or syndicate patrols. The journey took several hours when they finally dropped out of hyperspace. The asteroid came into view, a massive, jagged rock drifting in darkness, with faint orange lights glowing from deep within its tunnels. Ralph guided the ship toward a hidden docking bay cut into the rock. A rough, static-filled voice came through the cums. Ralph Carter, you old rust bucket. I thought you were dead. Not yet, Ralph grinned. Got a favor to ask. The docking bay was dim, lit by flickering lamps. The air smelled of metal dust and machine oil. Jax was waiting at the ramp, tall, broad, with a beard streaked in silver and a cybernetic arm that hissed softly with each movement. He grinned wide and pulled Ralph into a half hug, half slap on the back. What trouble have you brought me this time? Jax asked, his tone half joking, half serious. Ralph glanced at the girls stepping off the ramp. This kind, he said. Jax's grin faded as his eyes studied them, the strange glow of their skin, the patterns under the surface, the way their eyes almost shimmered. You didn't, Jax muttered. You didn't bring Solari blood here, Ralph sighed. I didn't exactly plan it. Jax rubbed his forehead. You know what happens when the syndicate finds out there. Here. They won't, Ralph replied. You've got the best hiding spot in the system. Jax stared at him for a long moment, then finally nodded. Fine, you've got a day or two, no more. He led them through narrow tunnels cut into the asteroid's core, past humming machinery and miners in dusty suits. The colony was cramped but alive, a small market, a repair shop, even a canteen. The girls drew stares from the miners, whispers trailing in their wake. The eldest kept her head high, ignoring them. But Ralph could see her shoulders tense. Jax gave them a small storage room near the colony's edge. It wasn't much, a few bunks, a table, a heater that clicked every few seconds. But it was safer than open space. Ralph tried to relax, but something about Jax's expression earlier nagged at him. They had been friends for years, but Jax had always been a survivor first and a friend second. That night, Ralph joined Jax in the canteen. They drank cheap ale while Jax asked questions about the girls, about the strange case they carried, about how much the syndicate wanted them. Ralph gave vague answers, keeping details to himself. Still, Jax's eyes lingered too long on the door whenever someone entered, and his cybernetic hand tapped the table in a restless rhythm. In the storage room, the girls kept to themselves. The middle one worked quietly on the case, muttering about needing better tools. The youngest drew shapes in the dust on the floor. The eldest sat by the door, listening to every sound in the hallway. Hours later, Ralph returned from the canteen. He found the eldest still awake, her eyes sharper than before. Your friend is hiding something, she said. Ralph frowned. Jax? He's just grumpy. She shook her head. No, he is waiting. The truth came sooner than Ralph expected. A deep clang echoed through the colony, the sound of the main bay doors sealing. Ralph's comms device buzzed, and Jax's voice came through, low and tense. Sorry, Ralph, Jax said. The bounty's too high to ignore. Before Ralph could answer, heavy boots pounded down the hallway. Syndicate soldiers in black armor appeared at both ends, weapons raised. The eldest girl grabbed the youngest, pulling her toward the back wall. The middle one snapped her case shut, her eyes glowing faintly. Ralph swore under his breath. Betrayal always felt worse when it came from someone you trusted. The soldiers moved in, but the eldest girl shouted a word in Solari. The youngest's body lit up like a flare, flooding the hallway with blinding light. The soldiers staggered, shields up. Ralph used the moment, grabbing a metal pipe from the corner and swinging hard at the nearest soldier. The middle girl darted past him, pressing her hand to the control panel by the door. The lights flickered. Then the door slammed shut, trapping half the soldiers outside. Back exit, Ralph barked. They ran through the narrow maintenance tunnels, the air thick with dust. Jax's voice echoed through the colony speakers. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Ralph. Ralph didn't answer. He was too busy calculating how to get to his ship before the syndicate sealed the docks. The tunnels opened into a service shaft that led straight to the docking bay. The sound of boots followed them, closer now. The eldest handed the youngest to Ralph. Go, she said firmly. She turned. Facing the approaching soldiers, Ralph hesitated, but her steady gaze left no room for argument. He ran, the youngest clinging to his neck, the middle one right behind. When they reached the ship, Ralph saw Jax standing by the ramp. His gun was raised, his cybernetic arm glowing faintly. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. Then Jax lowered the gun, just slightly. Get out of here, he muttered, and don't come back. Ralph didn't wait to ask why. The ramp sealed, the engines roared, and the cargo hauler blasted out of the bay into the dark. Behind them, the asteroid shrank to a dim point of light. Ralph sat in the pilot's seat, jaw tight. He didn't know if Jax had let them go out of guilt, or because he knew the syndicate wouldn't stop. Either way, they were running again. Asterisk the Great Escape, the stars ahead looked peaceful. But Ralph knew peace never lasted. He kept the engines hot, pushing the old cargo hauler as far from Jax's colony as possible. Behind him, the youngest girl slept curled in a blanket. The middle one sat cross-legged with her strange case in her lap, and the eldest kept watch on the radar. They were 30 minutes out when the radar blipped. One blip became 3, then 5. Company, Ralph muttered. The eldest's eyes narrowed. Syndicate. The middle girl's voice was sharp. They locked on too fast. They must have tagged our ship when we were docked. The lead ship appeared on the scanner, sleek, fast, and heavily armed. The others spread out behind it, forming a net. They're trying to hurt us, Ralph said. He yanked the controls, diving into a sharp turn. But the Syndicate ships followed perfectly. They're not letting us go this time. The first volley hit, shaking the whole ship. Panels rattled, lights flickered. Ralph gritted his teeth and threw the hauler into a corkscrew dive. A second volley missed by inches, exploding in bright flashes across the void. The middle girl pressed her hands to the case, whispering in that strange Solari language. The case opened and projected thin streams of light that twisted in the air like living wires. She reached into the light and pulled a small sphere of energy. What are you doing? Ralph shouted over the alarms. I'm making them blind, she said. The sphere shot out through the ship's comms array, flooding the Syndicate ships with static. On the radar, two of them slowed, drifting off formation, but the lead ship stayed locked on. It fired a grappling tether, a glowing energy line that latched onto Ralph's hull. The hauler jerked violently. They're reeling us in. Ralph shouted. The eldest girl stepped forward, her voice steady. Open the cargo bay. What? We'll lose. Do it, she said firmly. Ralph slammed the release. The cargo bay doors blew open, and a storm of scrap metal and debris tumbled out into space. The tether's line tangled in the spinning junk, pulling the lead ship off course for a few seconds. Ralph used the opening to push the thrusters to full power, breaking free, but the Syndicate ships regrouped fast. The youngest girl suddenly stood, her hands glowing brighter than before. Cover your eyes, she said softly. A burst of light exploded from the rear of the hauler. Brighter than any star. On the radar, the Syndicate ships scattered. Their sensors scrambled. Ralph dove the ship into the debris field of a destroyed space station. The wreckage loomed around them. Broken towers, shattered walkways, and drifting hull pieces from ships long dead. Ralph zigzagged between the ruins, the old hauler groaning under the strain. The Syndicate ships followed, firing wildly, their blasts tearing through the station's remains. One stray shot hit a massive fuel tank, the explosion sending shockwaves through the debris. It knocked one Syndicate ship off course, spinning into a beam and breaking apart. Ralph's hands moved fast, turning the hauler down a narrow gap between two massive hull plates. The eldest girl stared at the radar. They're not giving up. They never do, Ralph replied. The middle girl looked at the eldest, then back at Ralph. It's time, she said. The eldest hesitated, then nodded. Time for what? Ralph asked, without answering. The eldest touched the middle girl's shoulder, and the case in her lap began to hum. The light from inside brightened, spilling into the cockpit. A shimmering map projected into the air, stars, planets, and a pulsing red mark at the far edge of known space. What is that? Ralph asked, eyes fixed on the map. The reason they will never stop, the eldest said. It is hidden in my DNA, the location of the Ark. The Ark? Ralph repeated. A ship, she explained, built by the Solari before the Syndicate rose to power. It holds enough energy to destroy or rebuild entire worlds. Ralph's stomach sank. And I guess the Syndicate wants the destroy option. He said, they will burn the galaxy to get it. The eldest replied, her voice steady. The radar pinged again. The Syndicate ships were closing. Ralph's mind raced. If the Ark was real, it could be the key to ending this, but getting there meant every Syndicate ship in the sector would be on their tail. He looked at the map again, then at the three girls. All right, he said. Let's find your Ark. The middle girl flicked her fingers through the projection, marking a path. The route twisted through uncharted systems, past black holes, and through ancient warp gates that no one had used in centuries. It will be dangerous, she said. Good, Ralph grinned. Danger's the only thing I'm good at. The youngest girl looked up at him, her glowing eyes full of trust. You'll protect us? She asked. Ralph gave a small smile. I already promised, remember? The hauler roared forward, weaving through the last of the debris. The syndicate ships followed. But Ralph knew they couldn't match his stubbornness, not when he finally had a goal. Somewhere out there in the far dark was the Ark, and Ralph Carter was going to get there first. Asterisk, the lost world. The Ark's coordinates led them far beyond the star charts Ralph had ever flown, past the glow of known systems, past the last trade beacons, into the dark spaces where even pirates refused to go. The journey was not smooth. They slipped through abandoned warp gates, their rings cracked and drifting in silence. They skirted the pull of a black hole so massive it swallowed light itself. They dodged meteors that burned like fire as they tore across the void. After 3 days of travel, the navigation console began to flicker. The map's red pulse grew faster, the projection twisting until it formed a sphere surrounded by strange flowing symbols. "That's it," the eldest said. "The Ark's resting place." Ahead, a planet emerged from the dark. At first Ralph thought it was just a shadow in space, but as they drew closer, light rippled over its surface like water. It was cloaked, hidden from scanners by an energy field that shimmered in strange patterns. Ralph frowned. "How do we get through that?" The eldest stepped forward, placing her hand on the console. Her skin patterns began to glow in sync with the field outside. The ship's sensors chirped, and a thin path of light opened through the shimmering veil. "Follow it exactly," she warned. "One wrong turn and the planet will reject us." Ralph guided the hauler forward, every muscle tense. The field wrapped around them like liquid glass, humming softly against the hull. For a moment, everything went white. Then, the planet revealed itself. It was breathtaking. Vast forests of silver-leaved trees stretched across the land, their canopies glowing faintly. Rivers of liquid light wound between mountains made of crystal and stone. Strange winged creatures soared through a pale green sky, their feathers shimmering like metal. Ralph whistled under his breath. Not bad for a lost world. The youngest pressed her face to the window, eyes wide. The middle one was already scanning, her device humming as it mapped the terrain. "This place feels alive," she murmured. They landed near the ruins of an ancient city. Its towers leaned at odd angles, covered in vines that glowed faintly in the shade. Massive stone gates stood half buried in the earth, marked with the same flowing symbols from the map. "This is it," the eldest said quietly. "The Ark is here." They stepped into the ruins, the air warm and heavy with a scent like rain and metal. Every step echoed. The ground paved with smooth stone etched with deep grooves. Ralph ran his hand along one of the walls, feeling a faint vibration. "It's like the whole place is humming," he said. The deeper they went, the more the ruins seemed to resist them. Passages twisted in impossible ways, leading them back to where they started. Shadows shifted in corners where there was no light. Once, Ralph swore he heard a whisper that was not in any language he knew. After hours of searching, they reached a wide plaza at the heart of the city. In the center stood a massive circular structure, half buried but still intact. Its surface was smooth and dark, but lines of blue light pulsed faintly beneath. Eldest stepped forward, her glowing skin patterns matching the lines on the structure. "This is the Ark," she said, her voice almost reverent. Before Ralph could reply, the ground shook. From the shadows of the ruins, shapes began to move. Tall, lean creatures with armor made of bone and eyes like burning coals. Their movements were fast and deliberate, circling the plaza. "Syndicate?" Ralph asked. The eldest shook her head. "Guardians," the creatures hissed, their voices a low, pulsing rumble. One stepped forward, pointing a jagged spear at Ralph. The eldest spoke in the Solari tongue, her voice calm but strong. The Guardians paused, tilting their heads. Then one gestured toward the Ark, as if granting them passage. They approached the structure's base. The middle girl placed her hands on a panel, and the surface rippled like water. The panel opened, revealing a narrow passage lit by shifting blue light. Inside, the air was colder, and a deep thrumming sound filled the space at the end of the passage. They entered a chamber so large it felt endless. In its center floated a ship, sleek, silver, and alive with light. It was unlike anything Ralph had ever seen, its shape shifting slowly as if it was breathing. "This is a ship?" Ralph whispered. "The Ark," the eldest confirmed. "Built from living metal and powered by the heart of a star." Ralph stepped closer. But the moment his boots touched the final platform, alarms blared in the distance. The eldest's eyes went sharp. "They found us." Ralph turned to see syndicate ships breaking through the planet's veil above, their dark shapes cutting through the green sky. The Guardians hissed in anger, weapons raised. The eldest looked at Ralph. "We have one choice. Take the Ark now, or destroy it." Ralph's mind raced. The syndicate was minutes away from reaching the city. The Ark could save worlds, or doom them all. The middle girl's hands hovered over the Ark's control panel, waiting for his call. The youngest gripped his sleeve, her small voice trembling. "Ralph, what do we do?" The choice. The Ark's chamber pulsed with light. The hum in the air grew louder, as if the ship itself sensed the danger closing in. Above, the ruined city shook under the thunder of syndicate dropships breaking through the planet's veil. Ralph could feel it, the ground trembling with every landing. The sharp metallic roar of syndicate engines echoing through the ruins. The Guardians were already moving. Their bone armor clattered as they formed a defensive wall near the entrance. Spears raised, eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. The eldest girl stepped to the Ark's control panel, her glowing skin patterns matching the shifting lines on the ship's hull. "She will only respond to Solari blood," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. The middle girl moved to join her, but Ralph caught her arm. "Wait," he said. "Once you start her up, there's no turning back. What exactly is she going to do?" The eldest glanced at him, her eyes holding both urgency and something heavier, sorrow. "She can destroy anything in her path," she said. "Or she can restore what was lost, heal what was broken, make a dead world breathe again." The youngest's small voice broke in. "But she can only do one." Ralph's jaw tightened. So that was the choice. Use the Ark as a weapon to stop the syndicate now, or as a tool to rebuild after the fight. Both paths came with risk. If they used it to heal, the syndicate might win this battle. If they used it to destroy, there might not be a galaxy worth living in afterward. The ground shook harder from the entrance. A Guardian called out in a deep, rumbling tone. "They're coming," the eldest translated. Ralph swore under his breath. "We don't have time for a long debate." Blaster fire echoed through the chamber's distant hallways. The Guardians clashed with syndicate soldiers, bone spears shattering against black armor. The air filled with the sharp scent of burning metal. One soldier broke through the line, charging toward the Ark. Ralph grabbed a fallen spear and threw it, catching the soldier's square in the chest. The body clattered to the floor, the sound ringing like a warning bell. The middle girl pressed her hands to the Ark's panel. Light surged under her fingertips. "She's ready," she said, her voice trembling. "But she needs your decision." Ralph, he looked at all three of them, the eldest, strong and unflinching. The middle, clever and determined. The youngest, still clutching his sleeve but trying to be brave. He thought of the syndicate worlds he'd seen, stripped bare for profit, of the dead stations drifting in the dark. He thought of the miners, traitors and drifters who had no army, no voice, no one to fight for them. He thought of jocks, and how fear had made him choose wrong. Ralph took a deep breath. "Destroy their fleet," he said finally. "But no more than that, no planets, no cities, just the ones who came for us." The eldest nodded, her expression unreadable. "It will be done," she said. She stepped to the Ark's heart. The ship responded instantly, its silver surface shifting like flowing water, opening to reveal a core of blinding white light. The hum became a deep, steady pulse that Ralph could feel in his bones. Energy surged out from the Ark, racing through the ground and into the sky. Above, the syndicate dropships froze mid-flight, their engines sputtering. Then one by one, they exploded into silent blossoms of fire. The shockwave rolled across the ruins. shaking the crystal mountains, sending ripples across the rivers of light. When it faded, the sky was clear, no syndicate ships. No more threat. The Guardians lowered their weapons, their glowing eyes dimming in respect. But the Ark's light did not fade completely. The middle girl touched the panel again. "She's waiting," she said softly. The eldest looked at Ralph. "She wants to give something back before she sleeps again." Ralph hesitated. The Ark had power left, not enough for another attack, but enough for one act of restoration, he thought. Of the mining colonies where children grew up breathing dust, of the dead moons that could have been gardens. "Bring life to one world," he said. "One that's been forgotten." The Ark's light flared again, this time softer. Somewhere far away, a barren planet would wake to rivers, forests, and skies filled with air. Ralph didn't know which world it was, but the thought made his chest feel lighter. The Ark's surface sealed itself, the light fading to a calm glow. "She will sleep now," the eldest said, "until the galaxy needs her again." The Guardian stepped back, allowing Ralph and the girls to return to the hauler. Outside, the green sky was quiet, the silver forests untouched by the battle. The youngest climbed into her seat, smiling for the first time in days. The middle girl set her strange case on the console, now empty. The eldest sat beside Ralph, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. As they lifted off, Ralph glanced at her. "So, what now?" She looked at him with that same unreadable calm. "Now we run until we're ready to stop running," Ralph smirked. Figures. The planet's shimmering veil closed behind them, hiding the Ark once more. The galaxy was still. Dangerous, still full of syndicate claws waiting in the dark. But for the first time since this began, Ralph didn't feel like he was just surviving. He had 3 daughters now, not by blood, but by promise, and promises Ralph Carter kept.